She endangered the whole community, said Karen Dorsey, vice president of our HOA and self-proclaimed nurse, shoving a violation notice into my chest. Your wife injected herself with unapproved medication inside HOA property. You'll both be fined and reported. Her tone was sweet poison, the kind that hides behind professionalism but drips with power. I looked past her at my wife, Emily, pale and trembling on the clubhouse couch, a blood pressure cuff still dangling from her arm. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. For a moment, all I could hear was the steady thud of my heartbeat, sharp, loud, furious. You injected her, I said, my voice low but shaking. That wasn't a vitamin, was it? Karen blinked, her smirk tightening. It was a routine prenatal booster, Mr. Calloway. You should be thanking me, not accusing me. Her condescension hit harder than the words themselves. She turned toward the group of board members behind her, already shifting the story. He's unstable, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play. The recording captured her earlier voice perfectly. This will help the contractions pass faster if you've been having them. The room went quiet. Karen's jaw tightened. Delete that, she hissed. You're violating privacy policy. No, I was a paramedic. I'd seen what methylergometrine could do to a pregnant woman, and now my wife, our unborn child, was paying for Karen's arrogance. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone in power hide behind a title to ruin your peace, hit subscribe right now. Because this isn't the kind of HOA story you hear on the news. This one got a woman arrested. I'm Ryan Calloway. I moved into Maple Ridge Estates to give my wife a calm place to carry our first child, away from the sirens and night shifts that used to define my life. I know how to read vitals, how to save a life with a needle, and how to recognize when someone abuses their medical credentials. What I didn't know was that a woman in scrubs with a clipboard could become more dangerous than anything I'd seen in the back of an ambulance. Karen Dorsey was untouchable here. Every board meeting ended with her monologues about community health compliance. She wore her nursing badge like a crown, handing out supplements and shots from the clubhouse fridge. No labels, no paperwork, no oversight. People trusted her because she smiled and used big medical words. And in a neighborhood built on HOA trust, her power wasn't just social. It was absolute. When Emily fainted that evening, I'd thought it was exhaustion, pregnancy in the summer heat. I was wrong. The ER doctor called me out of the room, voice tight, saying she'd found traces of methylergometrine, something used to stop postpartum bleeding, never meant for a woman still carrying. My wife could have lost the baby. She could have lost her life. So, when Karen handed me that violation slip, accusing Emily of misconduct, something broke inside me. This wasn't just paperwork or power games. This was my family. That refrigerator in the clubhouse, the one Karen kept locked, had become a symbol of every rule she twisted and every line she crossed. And I wasn't going to let her bury what she'd done. I remember the way Emily looked at me when I drove her home that night. She kept apologizing through tears, blaming herself for trusting a nurse. She said it was vitamins, she whispered, and I just wanted to do what was best for the baby. The baby. Those words kept echoing, bouncing around my skull until it was all I could hear. That's when I decided, if Karen wanted to hide behind rules, I'd use her own system against her. I knew chain of custody. I knew how to log evidence, how to build a timeline so tight it couldn't be dismissed. I wasn't a lawyer or a cop, but I understood accountability. Maple Ridge was supposed to be where we started our lives as parents. Instead, it became a crime scene disguised as a community. And as Karen turned her back on me that night, walking away with her stack of falsified reports, she didn't realize she'd already handed me her confession, the recording, the dosage slip, the medical phrase she should never have said. She thought I'd play by her rules. But I've seen what happens when someone hides negligence under authority, and this time, the patient wasn't going to die quietly. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the HOA handbook spread open beside the hospital report, the yellow light buzzing overhead. Emily was asleep on the couch, one arm draped over her belly, the glow of the oxygen monitor blinking soft and steady. I kept replaying Karen's words in my head. Community health compliance, voluntary injection program, authorization form. It all sounded rehearsed, corporate, manufactured. I wanted to find the line that made it legal. I couldn't. The HOA handbook was thick with fine print. Pages of landscaping rules, fence height restrictions, even pet weight limits, but nothing, absolutely nothing about medical procedures. Yet buried in the community participation section was one line that made me pause. Residents are encouraged to engage in wellness initiatives managed by the HOA's Health Committee for the Betterment of Community Insurance Ratings. It wasn't authority, it was a loophole. Karen had built her own empire out of a single sentence. I ran my finger across the page and felt my stomach twist. Encouraged, not required. But she'd used that word like a weapon, scaring residents with talk of insurance audits and health code penalties. I'd seen fear like that in my patients, the kind that makes people obey to survive. Karen didn't need legal power, she just needed control. By morning, the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I brewed. Coffee, stared out the window, and saw her walking across the street in her HOA polo, clipboard tucked under her arm. She waved to Mrs. Talbot next door, cheerful as if she hadn't almost killed someone 12 hours ago. My hands clenched around the mug until it cracked. At noon, an email arrived. Notice of violation, medical misconduct. It accused Emily of disrupting community health protocols and demanded $250 in fines. Attached was a photo, Emily sitting on the clubhouse couch unconscious. Karen had turned a medical emergency into evidence. The subject line read, "Incident report filed with board." That's when I realized she was doubling down. If she could rewrite the story fast enough, she'd bury the truth under paperwork. I'd seen hospital administrators do the same thing. Spin negligence into procedure, replace guilt with jargon. But this time, the patient had someone who understood the system. I pulled out my field notebook, the same kind I used on duty, and started logging everything. Time of injection, 6:47 p.m. Reaction, dizziness, abdominal pain, loss of consciousness. Witnesses, 4 residents, plus HOA staff. I noted Karen's words verbatim. Every detail mattered. Evidence always starts small. Around 3 p.m., I drove to the community center. The air smelled of chlorine from the pool, and the glass doors reflected the HOA logo, 2 oak leaves intertwined, symbolizing unity. The irony made me sick. Inside, the board's administrative assistant, a nervous young woman named Lisa, tried to block me from the file cabinet. "Only board-approved personnel can access complaint records," she stammered. I showed her my hospital ID. "I'm not asking for confidential data. I'm checking the date your health initiative was approved." She hesitated. Then she whispered, "That program? It's not on file." There it was, the first real crack. Karen had no documented authority to run her injections, and yet every notice and fee she issued cited that same program. I thanked Lisa and left before she could change her mind. Outside, the sky was darkening, thunder rolling across the horizon. I stood beside the clubhouse, watching lightning flash against the reflection of that stainless steel refrigerator through the window. The place looked sterile from a distance, but I knew what was inside. Unlabeled syringes, expired vials, evidence of malpractice hiding behind HOA branding. That fridge had become her altar, and everyone who doubted her was a heretic. When I got home, Emily was awake, reading the violation email through tears. "Ryan, we can't afford another fight," she said quietly. "She's the board. They'll blacklist us." I knelt beside her, resting my hand over hers. "She almost took our child," I said. "This isn't about fines anymore." That night, I printed every piece of evidence I had. The email, the medical report, photos from the clubhouse, and the sound file of her voice saying, contractions. Then I made a copy of the HOA handbook page with the Wellness Initiative clause. One set went into my binder, the other into a sealed envelope marked for legal review. I didn't know yet who I'd send it to, the health department, the state board, someone higher, but I knew it had to leave Maple Ridge. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was criminal negligence disguised as community care. Karen thought she could hide behind bylaws and bureaucracy. But she'd just given me the evidence I needed. She wasn't a nurse serving her neighbors. She was a liability waiting to be exposed, and I was done letting her write the story. The next night, I parked near the clubhouse again, watching the rain slick across the pavement. The reflection of that stainless steel refrigerator gleamed through the window like an accusation. I wasn't there to confront Karen this time. I was watching the man who kept cleaning up after her, Dale Mercer, the maintenance worker. I'd seen him before, quiet, dependable, the kind of man who avoided eye contact but always got the job done. Tonight he moved like someone trying not to be seen. He stepped out of the maintenance shed carrying 2 heavy black bags. They sagged low, clinking faintly as he crossed toward the dumpster behind the pool fence. Every few seconds, he looked over his shoulder. I got out of the car, pulled up my hood, and called out, "Dale!" He froze mid-step. The bags thudded against the wet pavement. When he turned, his face was pale under the security light. "Hey, Mr. Calloway," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His hands fidgeted with the hem of his jacket, water dripping from his sleeves. "What's in the bags?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my pulse was hammering. He hesitated. "Just cleaning supplies, old stuff." His words stumbled. His gaze flicked toward the clubhouse door, then back at me. "Karen said they needed to go tonight." "Karen said," I repeated, stepping closer. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, and his fingers tightened around the bag handles until the plastic stretched white. He wasn't lying to protect himself. He was scared. "Dale," I said quietly, "I know what's happening in there. Those aren't cleaning supplies, are they?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "You've already made her mad." That word, mad, hit harder than I expected. It wasn't gossip, it was warning. He looked like a man trapped between loyalty and conscience, trying to protect both his job and his soul. "I'm not here to get you in trouble," I said, "but if what's in those bags belongs in a biohazard bin, you already know this is wrong." He flinched at the word biohazard. His foot shifted back, like he was thinking about running. But then he exhaled, sharply, setting the bags down in the puddles. The smell of alcohol wipes and something metallic escaped as the seams loosened. "She said these were expired samples," he whispered. "Stuff the pharmacy didn't want. She told me to dump them before inspection week." I crouched beside the bags, careful not to touch anything. Inside were small glass vials, some labeled, some not, half filled with cloudy liquid. A syringe case lay on top, cracked open. I took a picture, the flash lighting up the rain. Dale flinched again, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Does she keep records?" I asked. He shook his head quickly. "She's got a notebook in her office, but it's locked," said it's personal patient notes. Patient notes. The words twisted my stomach. I stood up slowly. "You ever see her inject anyone else?" He swallowed hard, then nodded once. "Mrs. Avery and one of the pool moms last week. She tells them it's vitamins." His voice cracked. "I didn't think... She's a nurse, you know. I just figured she knew what she was doing." He wouldn't look at me now. His shoulders were hunched, trembling slightly from the cold or guilt. I couldn't tell which. His foot kept tapping the ground, restless, as if his body was trying to run away from his mouth. "Dale," I said gently, "you didn't hurt anyone, but if you stay quiet, she'll use you as a shield. When this breaks open, and it will, she'll say you handled it alone." His breathing quickened, eyes darting to the clubhouse again. Then, softer than the rain, he said, "She promised she'd clear my record if I helped. Said she could make my old DUI disappear from the board file." He gave a bitter laugh. Guess I wanted to believe her. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded paper, the violation email with the timestamp and photo. "You don't have to believe her anymore," I said. "You just have to tell the truth when it counts." He didn't answer, but his hands unclenched. The bags at his feet looked heavier now, the weight of his silence pressing down. "If I talk," he whispered, "she'll know it came from me." "Then don't talk yet," I said. "Just keep what you saw in your head. The day's coming when someone official's going to ask, and you'll get to tell it straight." He nodded slowly, rain dripping from his chin. As I turned to leave, I saw him pick up the bags again, but this time, he didn't head for the dumpster. He carried them back toward the maintenance shed, his shoulders squared just slightly more than before. That's when I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The first crack had opened in Karen's armor, and sooner or later, she'd hear it splinter. By morning, the HOA retaliation had already begun. When I stepped outside to grab the mail, 3 new notices were taped to our front door: non-compliance fine, property violation, and verbal harassment warning. Each one stamped with Karen Dorsey's perfect cursive signature. The papers flapped in the wind like warnings nailed to a gate. Emily stood behind me, wrapped in her robe, her face pale. "She's not even trying to hide it anymore," she whispered. "She doesn't have to," I said. "Not until someone stops her." The neighbors had started avoiding us. Conversations that used to stop at our driveway now ended across the street. I saw curtains twitch when I loaded the car. Fear spreads fast when authority turns personal. By noon, Emily's phone buzzed with HOA group messages about irresponsible residents causing division. Karen was shaping the narrative again, painting us as troublemakers, poisoning the air before I could speak. I drove to work that afternoon, but the station felt heavier than usual. Even my partner Mason noticed. "You look like hell," he said, sipping coffee by the ambulance bay. I told him enough to understand without dragging him in. The injection, the violation, the fines. He frowned. "You know she's playing the paper game. People like that. They make you look crazy just long enough for the system to believe them." That was the part that scared me most. Karen wasn't some ranting HOA tyrant. She was polished. She had a title, a degree, and a board that adored her. But her biggest weapon wasn't authority, it was perception. She could turn a paramedic into a paranoid neighbor with 3 emails and a whisper. That night, we came home to find a bright orange tag on the mailbox, "Community Access Pending Review." It meant suspension, no pool, no gym, no clubhouse privileges. It was the HOA's version of social exile. Emily tried to laugh it off, but when she saw her prenatal yoga class canceled in the group app, her eyes welled up. "They think we're a threat," she said softly. "I just wanted to live somewhere peaceful." I didn't answer. I was too focused on the reflection of the clubhouse lights flickering across the lake. Karen was hosting another board meeting inside. Cars lined the curb, SUVs and sedans polished like soldiers in formation. I parked a block away and walked the rest, rain slicking the pavement again. The window blinds were half closed, but through the gaps, I could see her standing at the head of the table, gesturing with that same confident smirk. The room looked like a courtroom. Charts, binders, even a projection screen flashing HOA Wellness Review. I recognized a few residents from our street, nodding as she spoke. I slipped closer, the cold seeping through my jacket. Her voice carried faintly through the glass. "The Callaways are undermining community trust. It's unfortunate, but disciplinary measures must be enforced." She paused for dramatic effect, then added, "It's not personal, it's procedural." That was Karen's trick. Every cruelty came wrapped in professionalism. Every lie dressed up in compliance language. I watched as she pulled out a document and passed it around. A few people frowned, others murmured approval. I couldn't hear the details, but I recognized the layout. An incident form. She was documenting her fiction. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. "You sure you're okay?" I started typing a reply, but a movement caught my eye. Dale was standing near the back of the room, mop in hand, pretending to clean the floor. His eyes met mine through the glass for a split second. Then he looked down and turned away. But I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened as Karen spoke. The guilt was eating him alive. Karen suddenly laughed, and the room followed like obedient echoes. My stomach turned. I'd seen sociopaths in emergency rooms, people who caused harm and smiled through it. But Karen had something worse. She had an audience. I turned back toward home, drenched but resolute. She could spread rumors, bury me in fines, even isolate my wife. But she'd made one mistake. She'd created too much paper. Every fake violation, every email, every meeting transcript was traceable. And as much as she loved her control, she'd never imagined that those same documents would become the rope she'd hang herself with. When I got home, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a new envelope she'd found in the mailbox. "It's from the HOA's legal committee," she said. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter accusing me of harassment of HOA staff and misuse of medical credentials. It demanded an apology and a signed agreement to cease interference with community operations. I let out a slow breath. "She's trying to bait me," I said. "If I respond emotionally, she wins. So what do? We build the case she can't ignore." As thunder cracked outside, I looked at the growing stack of papers on our counter, the violations, the photos, the medical report. Karen thought they were her shield. She didn't know they were evidence, and before long, they'd be in the hands of people who didn't care about HOA politics, only the truth. I spent the next 2 days in near silence, studying every vile photo I'd taken from the night behind the clubhouse. The labels were faded, but one stood out, a small amber bottle marked ergometrine maleate 0.2 ml. I didn't need Google to tell me what it was. I'd seen it before in emergency deliveries. Powerful, fast-acting, and absolutely forbidden during pregnancy. The idea that Karen had injected Emily with it made my hands tremble. I needed proof, not just anger. At dawn, I drove to the ambulance station before my shift, carrying a small cooler. Mason met me by the supply bay. "That the sample you mentioned?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Can you run it?" He frowned, glancing around. "Not officially, but I can get it screened for identification. We do drug verification runs all the time." I handed him the vial, sealed and labeled. "Chain of custody," I said. He chuckled. "You really are building a case, aren't you?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I'd already crossed from suspicion into investigation. And once the lab report confirmed what I believed, there'd be no going back. The next evening, Mason called. "You were right," he said. "It's methylergometrin. Strong dose, too. That stuff's controlled, Ryan. You can't get it without DEA authorization." I sat in the parking lot for a long time after hanging up, watching rain blur the streetlights. My chest felt tight. Not from fear, but clarity. Karen had crossed a line no license could excuse, and now I had her cornered. Back home, Emily was sitting on the couch with her laptop open. "They're saying I faked it," she whispered, showing me a post from the HOA forum. The Callaways are exploiting a simple misunderstanding for attention. It had Karen's tone all over it. Neighbors had commented with sympathy for poor Ms. Dorsey, calling her an angel who just wanted to help. "She's rewriting the story again," Emily said, voice shaking. "Then we write the truth louder," I replied. "But not here, somewhere she can't control it." That's when the plan began forming. I printed the lab confirmation, the timestamps from Mason's report, and the medical warning label from a verified pharmaceutical database. I organized everything in a binder, one section for the HOA's own communications, one for medical documentation, and one for personal testimony. Still, it wasn't enough. Karen's board would bury anything I sent internally. I needed the right audience, people above her pay grade. That's when I remembered something my instructor once said during EMT training. If a professional commits malpractice, report through their license, not their workplace. I stayed up until 3 a.m., compiling my evidence into a concise timeline, and uploaded it through the state nursing board's online complaint portal. I listed the injection date, the substance confirmed, and supporting images. I didn't include my name yet, just the incident data and medical report. The submission receipt flashed on my screen like a silent promise. Complaint, Nabowing 371. Pending review. The next morning, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time since that night, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. Emily could see it too. "You look different," she said softly. "Lighter." I just gave her the one thing she can't fight, I said. Authority. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected call from a restricted number. "Mr. Calloway, this is Investigator Collins with the County Health Department," a woman's voice said. "We received a parallel notice from the nursing board about a potential unlicensed medical program in Maple Ridge Estates. Can we schedule a meeting?" I agreed immediately. We met that evening at a diner outside town. She wore a gray suit and carried a thin folder. When I showed her the binder, she leafed through each page carefully, nodding as she reached the photos of the refrigerator and expired vials. "You've done half my work for me," she said. "You're certain this was administered by Ms. Dorsey?" I recorded her voice saying, "contractions," I said. "It's on my phone." That was the moment everything turned real. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Then she's in deep trouble. We'll need to obtain a warrant for inspection." Driving home that night, I passed the clubhouse. The windows glowed faintly. Inside, Karen's silhouette moved from the counter to the fridge, methodical, calm. She had no idea an investigation had already begun. When I walked in, Emily looked up from her tea. "You're smiling," she said. "Because it's out of her hands now," I told her. She built her empire on control, but she can't control the state. Outside, the rain started again, soft at first, then heavier. I stood by the window, watching the drops streak down the glass, thinking about the report number glowing on my screen. Complaint DASTA2371 wasn't just paperwork. It was justice in motion, and soon it would have Karen Dorsey's name stamped all over it. The next morning, a beige envelope lay on our doorstep, heavy and official-looking. The HOA seal was embossed in gold, like a trophy for tyranny. I opened it at the kitchen counter while Emily brewed tea. Inside was a formal notice. Emergency board meeting, mandatory attendance, Callaway residence discussion. It was signed by Karen Dorsey herself. "She's calling a hearing," I muttered. Emily looked up, anxiety etched across her face. "Do we have to go?" "If we don't," I said, scanning the letter, "she'll spin it as admission of guilt." The meeting was scheduled for that evening in the HOA conference room, the one that smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. By the time we arrived, the parking lot was already full, residents clustered in small circles, whispering. Karen stood at the doorway greeting people, wearing her scrubs again, like a badge of moral superiority. When her eyes met mine, she smiled sweetly. "Glad you could make it, Mr. Callaway. We're hoping to clear up some misunderstandings tonight." I didn't answer. I just held Emily's hand and walked inside. The room buzzed with unease. The board sat behind a long table, laptops open, papers stacked neatly like props. Karen positioned herself in the center, posture perfect, voice smooth. "Let's begin," she said. "We're here to discuss a disturbing pattern of harassment and misinformation threatening the unity of Maple Ridge Estates." She paused for effect, letting her words sink in. "Specifically, accusations made against me and our wellness program. Claims that are not only false but damaging to our community reputation." I could feel the weight of the crowd turning toward me. That was her strategy. Public humiliation before the truth surfaced. "Would you like to respond, Mr. Callaway?" she asked, feigning fairness. I stood. My pulse pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "You administered an unlicensed drug to my pregnant wife," I said. "That's not harassment, it's a fact." A ripple of gasps spread through the room. Karen's expression didn't falter. "That's an outrageous lie. We provided routine supplements approved under community wellness guidelines." "Then you won't mind me asking," I said, pulling a folded sheet from my pocket, "why the state nursing board already has an active investigation into your license." Her smile faltered for the first time. The silence that followed felt electric. Someone whispered near the back, "Wait, what?" Karen recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "Anyone can file complaints online these days. Probably you're doing. Baseless nonsense." "Baseless?" I stepped closer. "The vial from your clubhouse refrigerator tested positive for methylargometrine, confirmed by an independent lab. That's not a supplement. It's a uterotonic drug restricted to post-delivery use." Her face drained of color, but she hid it behind a tight smirk. "You're no doctor, Mr. Callaway. You don't have the credentials to interpret pharmaceuticals." "I don't need to," I replied. "The county health department does, and they'll be here sooner than you think." The room erupted, half in confusion, half in whispers. Karen banged the table. "Enough! This meeting is about community order, not your conspiracy theories." But her voice cracked on the last word. From the corner, I noticed Dale standing by the refreshment table, eyes down, gripping a cup so hard it bent. His leg bounced nervously. I caught his gaze for a split second and gave the smallest nod. He looked away, jaw tight, torn between fear and guilt. Karen saw it too. "Mr. Mercer," she snapped, "please remove that trash from the corner, will you?" He hesitated. His hands shook as he set the cup down, eyes flicking between us. I saw his throat tighten, his lips part like he wanted to speak, but then he stopped himself and walked out. Karen exhaled in relief, thinking she'd regained control. "See," she said, regaining her poise, "even our staff are tired of your harassment." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my jacket and placed the printed lab report on the table between us. "You might want to prepare your statement," I said quietly, "because once this hearing ends, you won't be answering to the board. You'll be answering to the state." The tension snapped like a wire. People started murmuring again, some defending her, others backing away in disbelief. Karen's mask of composure began to slip. She turned to the board president. "This meeting is adjourned," she said sharply, but I'd already won the room's attention. Truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs daylight. That night, as Emily and I walked back to the car, I saw Dale waiting near the maintenance shed. He didn't speak, but his nod said enough. He was ready. Karen had humiliated the wrong people for too long, and soon, the ones she used to silence would become the ones who spoke loudest. The air outside the clubhouse was damp and heavy, the kind of late-night silence that amplifies every small sound. Emily had gone home to rest, but I stayed behind, waiting by the maintenance shed where Dale had been standing earlier. The sodium lights buzzed above me, flickering against the puddles. When he finally appeared, his shoulders were hunched, his steps uneven, as if every footfall was a decision he didn't want to make. He stopped a few feet away, eyes darting toward the parking lot to make sure no one was watching. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "Karen told security to log anyone loitering after meetings." "I'm not loitering," I said quietly. "I'm waiting for you." He exhaled through his nose, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah," he said after a beat. "I figured." His hands were shaking. Even in the dim light, I could see the dark circles under his eyes. "She's not untouchable anymore, Dale," I said. "The state's already looking into her. If you have something to say, now's the time." He swallowed, gaze dropping to the wet ground. "I don't want trouble," he whispered. "I just wanted to keep my job." I took a step closer. "You didn't inject anyone. You didn't falsify records, but you've seen what she's done, and if you stay silent, you'll go down with her." He clenched his jaw, then looked up at me for the first time. "You really think they'll listen? The board? They all owe her something." "Not the board," I said. "The investigators." That word seemed to break something in him. He let out a hollow laugh. "You don't get it, man. She's been doing this for years. The first health drive she ran wasn't even about vitamins. It was flu shots she got from some clinic she used to work at. No paperwork, no approvals, just leftover stock." He started pacing, voice cracking under the weight of his own words. "She said it was for insurance points, told everyone she had a doctor's partnership. I didn't question it. I needed the paycheck." I stayed silent, letting him talk. The truth didn't need coaxing. It just needed air. "Then it got worse," he continued. "When she started keeping drugs in that fridge, I told her it wasn't right. She said they were samples from a hospital contact. But those boxes, they had tracking numbers. And when I checked one online, it showed as expired controlled substances from a discontinued supplier. She freaked out when she caught me looking. That's when she offered the deal. Said she'd erase my past DUI from the HOA records if I kept quiet and handled disposal." He pressed his palms together, trembling. "But it wasn't disposal. She wanted me to hide it. Told me to dump syringes in regular trash, pour out liquids, mix glass with recyclables, like no one would ever notice. I started keeping photos. At first just for insurance, you know. Then when your wife got sick, I couldn't sleep." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, wrapped in tape. "These are the photos, dates, labels, everything. There's even a video from the day she got that shipment-marked clinic samples. She used the HOA delivery address, not her own." I took the drive carefully, feeling its weight like it contained more than data. It carried his guilt, his fear, and maybe the key to ending this. "You did the right thing," I said. Dale shook his head. "Not yet. I should have spoken sooner. Maybe your wife wouldn't have been hurt." I met his eyes. "You're speaking now? That's what matters." He gave a faint, bitter smile. "Karen's smart. She'll know someone talked. She always knows." "She'll suspect everyone," I said. "But she won't know where it came from. The evidence goes straight to the investigator, under protection. You'll be fine." His breathing slowed, and for the first time, his posture straightened. "If you're right," he said softly, "then she's finished." I nodded. "She is." He looked toward the clubhouse one last time, the lights still glowing faintly behind drawn blinds. "You know what's crazy?" he whispered. "She used to talk about helping people, said she wanted to make this place safer. Now look at it. Scared neighbors, fake health drives, lies stacked to the ceiling. She built an empire on trust," I said. "Now it's collapsing." Dale gave a quiet nod and walked off toward the maintenance road, disappearing into the mist. I stood there alone for a long moment, staring at the flash drive in my hand. The sound of distant thunder rolled across the neighborhood, like a warning shot announcing what was coming next. For the first time, I felt it. momentum. The investigation wasn't just theory anymore. It had witnesses, proof, and time on its side, and soon Karen Dorsey would realize the walls she'd built to protect herself were already starting to close in. By the time dawn broke, I was already at my desk in the small spare room we called the home office. Blinds half closed, coffee gone cold. The flash drive Dale had given me sat beside the keyboard, its black casing wet from the rain. I plugged it in, half afraid of what I might see. A folder opened, time-stamped photos, videos, and scanned invoices. One clip showed Karen unloading boxes from the back of her SUV, glancing around before waving Dale over. The labels were clear: controlled substances, return required. Another showed her scribbling over an expiration date with a black marker. There it was, proof that everything Dale said was real. I spent the next few hours building the case like a medic setting up an emergency triage. Each file had to be organized, time-stamped, backed up. I created a new folder called Maple Ridge Evidence Log, with subfolders for witness statements, medical verification, and photographic documentation. Every picture Dale had taken matched a date from the HOA expense reports I'd already collected. She had billed the board for health outreach supplies on the same days those shipments arrived. When Emily came in around 9, she stopped at the doorway, eyes red from sleep. "You've been up all night," she said softly. "I'm almost done," I told her. "Once this is uploaded, she's finished." She walked over, resting her hand on my shoulder as she looked at the screen. "This is what she's been hiding?" "Yeah," I said, "and this is how she'll lose everything." I drafted the report carefully. No emotion, no speculation, just facts. The nursing board investigator, Collins, had told me to keep everything verifiable. I structured it like a paramedic log: date, event, outcome. Then I attached Dale's photos, the video clips, and the lab confirmation Mason had run. At the end, I wrote one line in bold: "Evidence suggests repeated unauthorized possession and administration of restricted drugs within HOA property." Before I sent it, I called Collins. "I have new materials," I said. Her voice came calm and measured. "Can you deliver them in person? The county's forming a joint task review. We want to make sure chain of custody remains clean." I agreed immediately. We set the meeting for that afternoon at the county building downtown. Emily insisted on coming. "This isn't just your fight," she said. I couldn't argue with that. We arrived under a gray sky, the kind that made everything look colder. Inside, the conference room smelled like paper and old carpet. Investigator Collins sat across from us, flanked by a man from the county's legal department. I slid the flash drive across the table. "Everything's documented," I said. "Photos, invoices, recordings, all tied to HOA purchases and delivery schedules." Collins plugged it in and opened a file. The video of Karen unloading the boxes played silently, the timestamp in the corner flashing in red. The lawyer leaned forward. "That address on the label, that's a hospital supplier. These materials are tracked." Collins nodded. "And by using an HOA address, she bypassed professional reporting channels." She turned to me. "You did excellent work, Mr. Calloway. This is more than enough to initiate a formal site inspection." Emily exhaled, her grip tightening around my hand. I felt the tension drain from my chest for the first time in weeks. Before leaving, Collins added, "If she contacts you, don't engage. We'll handle communication from here on out. And please, be careful. People like her get unpredictable when they realize control is slipping." Driving home, I noticed the stillness of Maple Ridge. No one was outside. Even the flags that lined the street looked motionless, as if the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. When we turned the corner near the clubhouse, I saw Karen's car parked out front. She was standing by the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, pacing in small circles. Her movements were sharp, her head jerking with each word she hissed into the receiver. "She knows," Emily whispered. "Maybe," I said, keeping my eyes forward. "But she doesn't know how much." That night, I saved the evidence copies to a cloud drive and another flash drive hidden under the floor vent. Then I wrote one final entry in my log. Dale Mercer provided corroborating testimony and visual proof, evidence delivered to authorities. Pending inspection notice. The next morning, a white envelope appeared on every doorstep in Maple Ridge. Notice of temporary suspension of health program, signed by the county health department. Beneath it, in smaller print, inspection scheduled, date undisclosed. I stood at the window, watching neighbors step out in confusion, reading their letters. The illusion was breaking. Karen's empire of trust, built on charm and fear, was starting to crumble. And she could feel it. For the first time, Maple Ridge didn't look perfect. It looked real. The inspection notice spread through Maple Ridge like wildfire. By noon, neighbors were clustered in driveways and cul-de-sacs, whispering about county agents and health violations. Some blamed us outright. Others avoided eye contact entirely. But behind the gossip, there was something else, a tremor of fear. The illusion of safety Karen had built was cracking, and no one knew what would come tumbling out when it finally collapsed. By the third day, the county inspectors arrived. 3 white SUVs rolled into the neighborhood, their logos clean and official, carrying the kind of authority no HOA letterhead could imitate. I watched from my porch as they parked outside the clubhouse. Karen stood waiting by the door in her navy blazer, trying to look calm. Her arms were crossed tight across her chest, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'd never seen Maple Ridge so quiet. Even the usual sprinklers had stopped, as if the whole street was holding its breath. One of the inspectors, Collins, met my eyes briefly before heading inside. She gave a small nod, acknowledgement without words. My pulse steadied. The process had begun. I stayed back, not wanting to interfere. Emily joined me with a blanket draped over her shoulders, her belly resting against the fabric, like a reminder of why any of this mattered. "You think they'll find enough?" she asked. "They'll find more than enough," I said. She left a paper trail everywhere she went. Through the clubhouse windows, I could see flashes of movement. Inspectors photographing shelves, opening boxes, tagging evidence. Karen followed them, gesturing wildly, her composure slipping one argument at a time. A few residents gathered near the sidewalk, pretending not to stare. Someone whispered, "They brought boxes," as if that alone was proof of guilt. After an hour, Collins stepped out with a clipboard. Karen trailed behind, her face flushed. "This is harassment!" she snapped, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can't just barge into private property without notice." Collins turned calmly. "We acted under state authorization. The materials in your possession are subject to regulation. You'll receive official correspondence within 48 hours. Karen's hand trembled as she pointed toward me. "He did this. He's been targeting me since day one." Collins didn't even look my way. "We'll be in touch, Ms. Dorsey," she said, then returned to her vehicle. Karen stood frozen, jaw tight, watching as they drove off with sealed containers marked Evidence, Pharmaceutical Division. When she finally turned, her eyes met mine across the street. For the first time, she didn't speak. She just glared, cold, hollow, cornered. Then she stormed back into the clubhouse and slammed the door. That evening, Dale came by the house. He looked different, lighter, like a man finally breathing air after years underground. "They took everything," he said quietly. "The fridge, the boxes, even her laptop. Collins told me my statement's been recorded officially. I'm free to go back to work. Or not. She said I did the right thing." I nodded, motioning him inside, but he shook his head. "No, I just came to thank you. For not throwing me under the bus." "You came through when it counted," I said. "That's what matters." He rubbed his hands together nervously. "Karen's been calling people. She's saying it's a misunderstanding, that the state's overreacting. Some folks still believe her." "They won't for long," I said. "Not when the report goes public." He hesitated at the door. "She'll fight it, you know? People like her, they don't go down easy." I looked past him toward the clubhouse, where the lights inside flickered weakly. "She can fight all she wants," I said. "The fight isn't with me anymore. It's with the state." After he left, I sat on the porch steps, listening to the crickets hum beneath the cooling night air. For the first time in months, I felt a strange stillness, not victory yet, but the kind of calm that comes right before a storm breaks completely. Around midnight, a new email pinged on my phone. Subject, Inspection Preliminary Findings, Confidential. I opened it, heart racing. The document was short but devastating. Findings indicate multiple counts of unlicensed medical storage and administration of controlled substances. Recommendation, immediate suspension of professional license pending criminal review. I read it twice, then showed Emily. She covered her mouth, eyes, welling with tears. "It's over," she whispered. Almost, I said. Now the board has to face it too. Outside, a gust of wind rolled through the trees, carrying with it the faint sound of something metallic, like a lock being turned for the last time. The refrigerator in that clubhouse had once symbolized control. Now it was gone, sealed in evidence bags. The system Karen had built to protect herself was gone with it. All that was left was truth, and truth once exposed doesn't go back in the fridge. The morning after the inspection report hit, Maple Ridge felt like a battlefield after the smoke cleared. The manicured calm was gone. Neighbors whispered in clusters. HOA board members avoided one another. And the community Facebook group had exploded overnight. Screenshots of the county report were everywhere. Words like felony possession and license suspension were now being typed beside Karen Dorsey's name. Emily sat on the porch swing, reading through the posts. "They're all pretending they didn't know," she said. "Half these people defended her last week." "That's how fear works," I said. "They worship control until it turns on them." A black sedan pulled up across the street. The HOA president's car. He stepped out slowly, face drawn tight. He was usually smug, but today his expression carried something new. Calculation. "Ryan," he called out, "can we talk?" I joined him on the sidewalk. His eyes darted around, making sure no one else was close. "Look, none of us had any idea what Karen was doing. The board trusted her credentials. She ran that health program on her own authority. That's not what the expense records show," I said. "You all approved reimbursements for medical supplies." He shifted uncomfortably. "She presented invoices. They looked legitimate." "Because you didn't verify them," I said. "You just signed whatever she handed you." His voice dropped. "The county's requested a copy of all board meeting minutes. If they find out we approved anything tied to those drugs, we could lose our charter." "Then you should start cooperating," I said, "because if you keep covering for her, you'll go down too." He nodded slowly, defeat washing over him. "They're calling an emergency session tonight," he said. "Karen's not invited. She's already threatened to sue." I almost laughed. "Of course she has." When he left, Emily squeezed my hand. "You think they'll actually remove her?" "They don't have a choice," I said. "She's radioactive now." That evening, the emergency HOA session took place in the clubhouse. Same room, different energy. The curtains were open this time, the refrigerator gone, leaving an empty corner where her empire used to sit. Folding chairs filled the room, residents crammed shoulder to shoulder. The president stood at the front, visibly sweating under the fluorescent lights. "As of today," he began, "the board has voted to suspend all operations of the health committee pending further notice. Miss Dorsey's license is under review by state authorities, and we are cooperating fully with the investigation." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Then the door burst open. Karen stepped inside. Her blazer was wrinkled, her hair pinned back hastily, eyes burning with fury. "You think you can shut me out of my own community?" she shouted. "I built this place. You're all cowards." The room froze. Even the board president looked startled. She stalked to the front, slamming her hand on the table. "Those so-called inspectors don't understand what I was doing. I saved people here. I improved our insurance standing. I prevented illness." "You endangered lives," I said, standing from the back row. Every head turned toward me. "You gave my wife a drug that could have killed our child. You lied about your authority, forged invoices, and used the HOA as your cover. This community doesn't need saving. It needs healing." Her face twisted. "You think you're some hero because you tattled to the government? You ruined everything." "No," I said. "You did." Before she could reply, the door opened again. 2 county officers entered with Collins right behind them. The crowd parted like water. Collins stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Karen Dorsey, you are under formal arrest for unauthorized possession and administration of controlled substances, falsification of medical records, and obstruction of a state investigation." Gasps filled the room. Karen's bravado shattered. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered, backing away. "You can't arrest me here." But the officers already had her wrists behind her back. The metallic click of the cuffs echoed off the tile. "You brought this on yourself," Collins said quietly. As they led her out, the entire room seemed to exhale at once. The silence that followed was thick, not just with relief, but disbelief. The woman who had ruled every conversation, every rule, every life in Maple Ridge was gone. escorted out under the same HOA lights she once used to intimidate everyone else. The president turned to me, his voice unsteady. "Mr. Calloway, on behalf of the board, we're sorry." I looked around the room. Faces I'd seen turn away before now looked back, wide-eyed, guilty, grateful. "Apologies don't change what she did," I said quietly. "But maybe this time you'll pay attention before you hand over power again." As Emily and I stepped into the cool night, the air smelled of rain and disinfectant, the kind of clean that comes after a storm. The clubhouse lights flickered behind us, and for the first time since we moved here, Maple Ridge didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place ready to start over. The next evening, the entire neighborhood gathered outside the community park, the first open forum Maple Ridge had. Held in years, word had spread that the county's findings would be read aloud, and everyone wanted to see the fallout. The twilight air buzzed with low murmurs, camera phones, and the uneasy shuffle of people trying to look uninvolved while craving the spectacle. The playground lights glowed over the crowd, casting long shadows over the patch of wet grass where the HOA board had set up a small podium. Emily stood beside me, her arm looped around mine. Her belly was round now, steady beneath her hand. "You don't have to speak," she whispered. "I do," I said. "This isn't about her anymore. It's about every person who let her rule through fear." The board president, gray and shaken, stepped to the mic. His voice cracked on the opening line. "As you all know, the county health department completed its investigation into the Maple Ridge Wellness Program. The findings were serious." He glanced toward me before continuing. "The board takes full responsibility for allowing unverified medical activity on community grounds. We will be cooperating fully with ongoing legal proceedings." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught sight of familiar faces, neighbors who had once turned their backs, now looking for someone to blame. One woman shouted, "So she really gave out drugs?" Another, clutching her purse, asked, "Is it true she hurt someone?" The president hesitated, then said, "Yes. Unauthorized administration of restricted substances occurred. One resident's health was endangered." Emily's hand squeezed mine. That's when I stepped forward. "You want to know what really happened?" I said, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. The crowd turned. The president froze, torn between stopping me and letting it happen. "My name is Ryan Calloway," I said. "I'm a paramedic. My wife, 6 months pregnant, trusted your HOA nurse, Karen Dorsey, because she acted like authority. She told Emily a shot would help her stay strong. It almost ended her pregnancy." A gasp rippled through the gathering. Some people covered their mouths, others looked at the ground, guilt already blooming across their faces. "She didn't just give vitamins," I continued. "She gave methylorgometrin, a postpartum drug meant to stop bleeding after childbirth. She gave it without consent, without a prescription, and without supervision. Then she blamed us for questioning her." The board president swallowed hard. "Mr. Calloway—" "No," I said sharply. "Let me finish." The crowd quieted again. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. "When I reported her," I said, "she tried to ruin us. Fines, violation letters, lies. She said I harassed her. But the truth came out, thanks to people like Dale Mercer, who risked his job to expose what was really going on." Dale stood near the back, eyes low. People turned toward him, murmuring. His shoulders stiffened, but then he lifted his chin. For the first time, he didn't look afraid. I pointed toward the clubhouse visible in the distance, its dark windows reflecting the streetlights. That fridge in there wasn't a wellness center. It was a crime scene. Every syringe, every vial, every fake invoice. Gone now, sealed by the county. You all walked past it for years because it looked official. A man from the crowd shouted, "Why didn't the board check?" The president's voice trembled. "We trusted her." I faced the crowd again. "That's what everyone here did. Trusted titles instead of truth. And that's how she got away with it. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it smiles, gives you a clipboard, and says it's for your own good." Silence followed. For a long moment, all anyone could hear was the wind rustling the oak branches above the park. Then applause started, slow, hesitant, but real. One neighbor clapped, then another, until the sound swelled across the crowd. It wasn't celebration, it was release. Emily leaned her head against my shoulder. You did it, she whispered. I shook my head. No, we did. So did Dale. And Collins. Everyone who stopped pretending this was normal. The board president stepped forward, gripping the microphone again. His voice steadied. Effective immediately, the board will dissolve the wellness committee and launch a full re-election of HOA leadership. Maple Ridge will no longer operate under the authority of a single figure. The announcement drew a few cheers, some tears. A woman near the front whispered, "It's about time." As the crowd began to disperse, Collins arrived quietly at the edge of the park, hands in her coat pockets. She caught my eye and gave a small nod. The kind professionals give when the job's done, but the meaning lingers deeper. Under the park lights, I realized this wasn't just justice. It was closure. The community that once feared Karen's clipboard was learning to speak again. And for the first time since moving here, the night felt like it belonged to us. A week after the park forum, Maple Ridge didn't look the same. The neighborhood that once buzzed with silent judgment now hummed with something softer. Relief. Lawns were overgrown, a few fences half-painted, but no one cared. The rules that used to define every inch of grass no longer mattered. For the first time, people waved again. They talked without fear of citations. The air felt lighter, as if the entire place had exhaled. Emily and I walked hand in hand down Maple Ridge Lane, her other hand resting over the curve of her stomach. The autumn wind rustled the trees, carrying the faint sound of kids laughing by the lake. A week ago, that laughter would have been followed by a warning about quiet hours. Now, it was the sound of freedom. The clubhouse door stood open. The county health department's inspection seal had been removed, and inside, volunteers were repainting the walls. Where Karen's refrigerator once stood, a new plaque had been installed, Family Wellness Room, dedicated to community safety. Emily paused in front of it, eyes glistening. "You really did it," she said. I smiled. We did, and so did everyone who decided to stop looking away. We walked inside, and for a moment, I stood in the same spot where I had first found Emily collapsed weeks ago. The floor had been polished, the fluorescent lights replaced with warm amber ones. The cold hum of the old refrigerator was gone, replaced by the laughter of volunteers unpacking new baby supplies and first aid kits. What once symbolized corruption had become something real. Healing. Dale was there too, painting one of the walls. He looked healthier, clean shave, eyes clearer, posture stronger. When he saw us, he smiled nervously. "Didn't expect you to come by," he said. "I wanted to," I told him. "You're part of this too." He looked down, brushing his hands on his jeans. They offered me a full-time maintenance position again. Said I could help run the safety committee. Guess they finally learned what accountability means. "You earned it," I said. "You didn't just fix this place. You helped clean its conscience." He chuckled softly. Feels weird being the guy people actually trust now. As we talked, Collins entered the room, clipboard tucked under her arm. She looked different without her county badge, more human, less official. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "thought you'd want to know. The DA confirmed the charges, reckless endangerment, unlicensed practice, and falsified records." She pled out. 18 months county time and permanent license revocation. I nodded slowly. The words landed like the closing of a book. "It's over then." "Over," she agreed. "And because of your documentation, the HOA is being reviewed for compliance violations. It might become a resident-managed association." Emily smiled faintly. "That's the way it should have been from the start." Collins handed me a small envelope. "One more thing. From the Department of Health. They don't usually do this, but..." She gestured for me to open it. Inside was a letter of commendation. For courage, evidence integrity, and protection of public welfare. My name printed neatly at the bottom. I didn't know what to say. For months I'd been fighting in circles, chasing truth through bureaucracy and fear, and now it was here in writing, a simple acknowledgement that standing up had mattered. Outside, neighbors were planting flowers around the park. The board had been replaced by volunteers who smiled without rehearsing it. For once, Maple Ridge felt like a neighborhood again, not a stage for control. That night, Emily and I sat on the back porch, a blanket over our laps, the soft hum of crickets in the air. "She's gone," she said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "But the lesson stays. She looked at me. What lesson? That power without oversight always turns into something ugly, and that silence is how it survives. Emily smiled. Then maybe now we're done being silent. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of cut grass and rain. The sky above the lake reflected the moon like a silver coin tossed into dark water. Inside the house, a half-packed hospital bag sat by the door, waiting for the day our daughter would arrive. I thought about what kind of world she'd grow up in. One where people stood up when it mattered, where truth wasn't buried under paperwork, where even a single voice could change the rules. As the porch light flickered and Emily drifted to sleep against my shoulder, I whispered quietly to the night, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something new. For us, for this community, and maybe for anyone who's ever been bullied by power hiding behind a smile. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.